Welcome to Deleted Saves. On this episode, re-evaluating Fallout 4 in 2024, the PS5 Upgrade. Okay, listeners, let's not kid ourselves here. The history of the Fallout franchise has been a bone of contention among gamers ever since the release of Fallout 3 as a Bethesda Game Studios product, instead of an aging and barely functional, mostly defunct by that point, Interplay product. I've discussed this before, and in the nearly 2 years since I reviewed Fallout 3 on this show, not a goddamn thing has changed. Wow, it's been 2 years already. And even among Bethesda Fallouts, there is still contention. I wasn't going to even review this game, but something has changed. Let's get into that with 2015's Fallout 4, but with the 2024 PS5 upgrade. Way back in 2015, when it was finally revealed that Fallout 4 was on its way, just after the titan that was The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim had sucked up so much goodwill in the gaming sphere, and pretty much 7 years after the blockbuster success of Fallout 3, and the at the time questionable hit of Fallout New Vegas, and all the problems that title had on PC and consoles thanks to the laughable development turnaround time Bethesda forced upon Obsidian Entertainment. But for Fallout 4, the world was ecstatic. It had been rumored on Reddit and other social websites the game would take place in the city of Boston, one of the cradles of the American experiment. And what would a city over 200 years after the final war look like? A city mixed with such historic tropes and the 1950s semi-permanent aesthetic of that game world. Then it arrived. While visually striking, using all the power the various consoles and PC could muster for the aging game engine Bethesda insists upon using, it would see all of that upset. The first happened when Fallout changed hands from the original developer, Interplay, to Bethesda Softworks erupt yet again. Like an old wound, thought healed yet suddenly going septic. The old heads that had played the original games since 1997 already reviled the change from isometric gameplay and arguably true build your own character however you like role-playing game philosophy. And by the way, as a tabletop gamer, don't bring that bullshit argument to me because I'll be more than happy to school your dumb fucking ass in what true role-playing creative freedom is, and it ain't video games. Two role-playing mechanics couched in a first-person shooter shell when Fallout 3 arrived in 2008. The players who adopted Fallout 3 as their first Fallout game had quickly grown to love the workings of this game and its semi-offshoot sequel, and felt betrayed with the decision Bethesda made for Fallout 4. And those same old heads, now older but still just as shitty, began to cackle from their porch-side rocking chairs while flooding the internet with told you so rhetoric, classic to all those who clutch nostalgia to their chests as their only personality trait. And regardless of changes to trends in the market or coming to understand what those studios specialize in. What are those changes, you ask? Several major ones. A fully voiced protagonist, which pissed people off to a weird degree, in a world where even traditionally silent protagonists like Mario and Link were shouting cute catchphrases or grunting in response to their environments. Large dialogue options reduced down to 4 responses, one per action button on the console controller face, which would reduce responses of the player down to yes, sarcastic yes, no, and yes, but I demand you pay me more. Less of a focus on pop culture reference jokes, mostly because the age and demographic of this audience had changed, and that kind of shit no longer lands. Also, as some said, less of a focus on deep storytelling, with many outcomes and options, which was kind of a bullshit idea back even then because it's a computer game story, not one being told to you by a human dungeon master. Less ability to design your own character, as there were only kind of 2. And the worst sin of all, Fallout 4 had pretty much become a first-person shooter with some level-up capabilities that wouldn't net the player skill upgrades, but would just give them new perks and edges every level, and by consequence, no level cap. You play as the lone survivor, one half of a married couple. The husband is an Army veteran of the Alaska campaign named Nate, unless you change the name, and you should, just to hear your house robot address you by it, yes, even swear words. And the wife is named Nora, unless names are changed, who was a stay-at-home mom before venturing back out into the world with a law degree to become a lawyer again. Already this was a limit on what character you could produce based on the story Bethesda was telling, not what story you were essentially telling yourself within a framework of the game. Backstory has always been just a sketchy framework of the series, a starting point from which you could further develop your paper doll, usually summed up with the title: Vault Dweller, Chosen One, Lone Wanderer, Courier. What kind of courier were you before the inciting incident? A gun-happy thug? A homegrown scientist in need of cash? What was your job in the vault? Mechanic? Cook? Garbage burner? All of those were great starting points, but by and large meant nothing once you were released into the open world to mix and match skill points and perks to suit your gameplay, unless you wanted to stick to whatever role you had created for yourself. Anyway, on the day of the bomb, as the game begins, upon the day of the Great War in the series of canon, you two are told that you have the ability to enter the nearby Boston Vault of 111. And when the air raid begins, the two of you scoop up your infant son, Sean, and race up the hill into the vault, and we get to watch a bomb go off a mere mile from the vault. The world dies in fire and radiation, while your family is shuttled safely underground. What you did not know is, of course, that the vaults were never meant to save humanity, but were a sick social experiment to be triggered upon the day of the war. In 111's case, it was a cryostasis vault, meant to put its citizens on ice indefinitely, while the real vault dwellers, the vault tech scientists and guards, were to monitor the citizens to see what would happen and just how long you could keep someone on ice. Whatever player you pick, male or female, your infant son is placed with your spouse, and you all freeze over instead of receiving a medical checkup. At some point, your character is thawed in a cacophony of noise and warning buzzers, as some people wearing hazmat gear enter the frame of the window of your pod, followed by a balding man in Road Warrior-esque gear and holding a revolver. They pry your spouse's pod open and take your infant son. As your spouse sleepily tries to resist, the leather-clad gunman executes your spouse, while you can but grunt and slam on the windows. Before turning the ice back on, he glares at your pod and says cryptically, "At least we still have the backup." You awaken sometime later to lights and sirens again and spill out onto the vault floor. Everyone is dead except you, frozen solid as their pods failed, except your spouse, who died by gunshot. As you flee the vault, you come to understand that this was never here to save you when the bombs fell, and that the original scientists and guards mutinied a very long time ago and fled, leaving the automation to watch over you until it too failed in time. Your spouse is dead and your infant son missing. You are thrust back into Boston in the aftermath of World War III, and it looks for all the world like we lost. You soon find your family robot, still functional but very rusted, who tells you it has been over 200 years since the bombs fell. 210, actually, putting the game as a date of 2287, 10 years after the canonical ends of Fallout 3. And that you should start your search in Concord, one of the first battlegrounds of the Revolutionary War. It is here where, for many players, the wheels began to come off the proverbial cart. After meeting the new dog meat, and quickly finding out that, like Skyrim, NPCs that your followers cannot die, a first in this series, you must slay your way through raiders and meet a group called the Minutemen, who are seeking a new home, and your old neighborhood in northwest Boston is just the place. You also get your first suit of power armor, a series capstone event for players who had previously fought through entire multi-hour plots just to get one of these walking tank skins to finish their earlier games, provided they had accepted the tenets of the Brotherhood of Steel, the in-game knights built in the wake of the Great War, to hoard technology and kill the Xeno. You will get many, many suits of power armor, all fully customizable with ridiculous paint jobs and scrap parts. And speaking of scrap, you will be hunting all of it. You will single-handedly be cleaning up the city of Boston and the state of Massachusetts, looking for screws, springs, and fuses to help build up multiple settlements, usually at the behest of the Minutemen. Every tree, old toaster, toy car, and Nuka-Cola bottle will fall to your hands searching for spare parts. Many saw this as yet another strike against this game. We had been seeing fan-created mods since Fallout 3 that were made to use the random useless junk you would find around the world to make repair kits or player homes to make your searching through the desk drawers and old safes for bullets and anti-radiation medication a bit more fun and less like you had pulled a bad hand in a digital poker game, and be lore friendly to making new stuff out of old shit. This was the first time we had seen it part of the base formula of the Fallout franchise, a required gameplay item that did not sit well with many. In the hindsight of 2024, many back in 2015 had said that this was no accident that this was included, or to the degree to which it was included, to make player homes and follower bases. And when Fallout 76 was announced, and the world learned that bullshit would be the entire fucking game loop, along with forced multiplayer and a traditional single-player role-playing game, well, it caused appraisals of both games to plummet. Over the course of the game, whose only defining character trait for your protagonist is "give me back my son," you will meet 4 factions whose goals you must align with, or not at all. And each only gets you one ending, one outright evil, one questionably evil but very totalitarian, one annoying, and one with an agenda. In this case, the synthetic rights movement. All of whom are supposed to be allegories to some specific American ideas or periods, but all of whom suck. Just suck. Suck out the fun, suck out the character, and are so one note even a tone-deaf motherfucker like me can't stand it. But Fallout, as a series, has never been about the overplot. If you know where to go and what to do, most games in the series can be completed within 5 to 10 hours. The franchise has instead been about exploration and environmental storytelling, all the little bits that make up the lifeblood of the game. Fallout 4 still has that in spades, and is probably the best part of the game. Those little moments and sections of the game that have nothing to do with the real plot. And that plot is as dumb as fuck. You follow a Blade Runner adjacent trail of clues as to realize your son was in fact kidnapped 70 years earlier by the survivors of the CIT, or Commonwealth Institute of Technology, our in-game allegory to MIT, as a pure human sample unaltered by radiation or evolutionary viruses, which in and of itself is incorrect, as we live in a world, even a game world, where the atomic bomb is real, and everyone and everything since the first detonation of one has left trace amounts of radiation on everything and in the DNA of every child born since 1945, and made this pure human the leader of the Institute. Now dying of cancer, your son Sean is the one who engineered your release from the 111 cryovault in the hope that you would be the only one who he could trust and understand to continue his work of replacing all of humanity with synthetic replicants for the glory of the Institute and to reform the world in their image. Much like the Brotherhood of Steel, who, after their change of heart in Fallout 3, have returned to their totalitarian roots and cannot stand the Institute, mutants or synths, and wishes to wipe out all 3 so America can be rebuilt in their image. The other 2 factions, the Minutemen and the Railroad, basically don't matter, but are at least arguably the good guys. That's your plot, folks. Suck on it. All of these sins were compounded into the idea that this was Bethesda run amok, that they had betrayed the idea and core concept of Fallout, etc., etc. Look, the reality is that Fallout, like Wasteland or Rage or any post-apocalyptic video game, are based on the pulp action idea of George Miller's Mad Max series of films, which in and of itself is based on even older ideas, such as Walter M. Miller's A Canticle for Leibowitz, about sacred junk from the gone-away world, or Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep and his wild sci-fi ideas. There's nothing to betray. Additionally, by this point, prior to the Microsoft buyout, Bethesda Softworks, under their umbrella corporation, owned both id Software and Machine Games, both of whom had wowed the world with updates to the FPF stalwart Wolfenstein, and the other who is the godfather of the FPS genre. So why wouldn't they use the skills of those studios in their role-playing division? It was merely a matter of time, folks. I'm not even going to get into Bethesda and paid mods. Fan mods have been a part of their games since Elder Scrolls III Morrowind, mostly to fix the broken code of Bethesda's ambition versus their technical skill and aging game engines, but also to add more life to the worlds they created by exuberant fans. I played nothing but modded Skyrim since 2019, and I'll never go back to unmodded Bethesda games. For every game since that, their game development arm has done, fans have been there to fix and improve it. But for Fallout 4, Bethesda Softworks decided to start charging for working mods, mostly cosmetic, or forcing the more prolific creators to pay them for the privilege of building within their architecture, thus forcing many to either get out of the scene altogether or beg players for money to pay these new taskmasters. That argument has been beaten to death and nothing has changed. If you are someone out there who does mod this game, keep doing the Lord's work online, kings and queens, and keep it on Nexus and out of Bethesda's hands. This mod controversy soured the reception of Fallout 4 even further. Also, unusually for this show, I am not going to go into the critical reception, mainly because I don't trust it. Public opinion around this game is more toxic than the skies around Boston of 2287, and there has been a lot of revisionist history around Fallout 4 to fit the angry narrative over Fallout 76. With this kind of poisonous atmosphere, finding accurate thoughts from supposedly unbiased third parties is simply not going to happen. And since none of these parties are unbiased, no one here is innocent. So y'all are just going to have to rely on my opinions here. So first of all, what is with this PS5 upgrade? Well, so far as I've been able to discover, it is not much beyond some official Bethesda mods that they felt needed to be included. In reality, I know this is a fast and cheap tie-in to the recent hit version of Fallout, the streaming TV series, which I haven't watched because I really don't watch TV, and we currently don't have any streaming services because my household isn't made of fucking money. And in a time where streaming services were supposed to be a cheaper alternative to cable TV, well, now all the services are acting and doing business exactly like the cable companies. So for me, that's the signal to stay fuck all this. The upgrade starts the player out with 6 or 7 quests the second the player leaves the vault, and a few junk-throwing weapons that seem to be broken as shit right now. But I guess not bad for a 9-year-old game at this point. But the quests, as far as I can tell, are all of the go here, do this, get reward kind. None of them are for a new player. They all assume you have either completed the game a long time ago or are coming back after a long hiatus. All of them take you to odd corners of the map and are unrelated to anything else, but seem to be incidental to other quest areas you might already be exploring. The graphical fidelity updates are unremarkable in any way compared to the original game, but then again, I couldn't give a shit less about graphics, and if you do, well, that's on you. Outside of this, I was completely disappointed by Fallout 4 when it came out. It seemed too much, too repetitive, and it just wasn't fun. It failed on the promises made by Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas. I didn't want to run around collecting garbage and base building, or spending time putting pockets on armor pieces, or building up a gun which somehow did not require any repairs after lying around for 200 years. I didn't want to sift through every fallen skyscraper and ruined hardware store looking for fucking duct tape and crazy glue. While some quests were good, the overall plot sapped any sort of enjoyment out of the setting I could have had. I didn't even want to get the DLC for the game, something I had to absolutely get for the previous two Bethesda iterations of the series. So I still do not know the lore of Far Harbor or the Nuka-Cola Disney World ripoff. Certain characters are absolutely amazing to speak to and adventure with. Others were awful, whiny, or just plain annoying. The writing was horribly uneven, even for the multi-writer Bethesda staff, and I just had to leave it behind. But then my opinion changed, somewhat. As the years have gone on, I have had a bit of a change of heart over Fallout 4. The previous game felt gritty or unified, a possibility of a world yet to come devastated by man's greed and bloodlust. But the world of Fallout 4 is really just a superhero title, set in the world after total nuclear destruction. A junk-laden Superman still trying to be human and live the American dream. There is nothing here that really unifies it with the remaining canon, and if you go into that thinking so, you're going to have a bad time. The path you need to take on this is that this game, and it does not hide this inspiration based on things you find in the base game, is entirely a pulp action title straight out of the Weird Tales days of action. Fallout 4 would be a great ongoing serial story alongside the early works of H.P. Lovecraft and Clark Ashton Smith, with the lone survivor sandwiched in between the latest of Howard's Conan series and whatever Ray Bradbury was peddling that month. If you treat your lone survivor as a reject from the pulp magazine era and just settle into that idea, then it will go so much better for you. But that will require a lot of work on your part, as the pulps fell out of favor decades ago, and readers today expect highly polished and corporate-friendly titles 1,000 pages long, no matter what the genre. Kind of like how we all just expect ultra-processed food as part of the American diet. Modern reading is like Walmart or McDonald's, easily digestible and easily forgotten. Modern games are heading that way too. I would say Fallout 4 does fit that mold too, but as I've been replaying it, if I treat it as a subversive pulp adventure by a man or woman at a time, it is easier to deal with. Is Fallout 4 a good Fallout game? No, absolutely not. Is it a good post-apocalyptic game? No, absolutely not. It is long since obvious Todd Howard and crew buckled to the shareholders, and I truly fear for what the eventual Fallout 5 will look like under Microsoft's leadership, the same way I fear for what the eventual Elder Scrolls 6 would like, as we know now that it is in pre-production now that Starfield is come and gone. But taken out of context of everything larger and left to its own devices, Fallout 4 is a decent shooter with a fun skin and some divergent plots, more than most straightforward SPF games are. The only other Superman in Bethesda's stable is the Doom guy, and honestly, I think the lone survivor is more fun. My current build is the male survivor, a Delta Force operative who came home and wanted to be a cop in Boston. Or at least that's how I'm playing him. He's already going to help the Brotherhood because it is an organization he understands, if not necessarily agree with. He'll look around the various police stations. He'll hang a lot with Nick Valentine. He'll still never go to Far Harbor or Nuka World, but he will chase down a bunch of mysteries trying because he is just a good man. Or Superman in this case. I got inspired by a real-world person I met recently due to some family tragedy I've suffered. But at the end, this survivor is a pulp hero. As over-the-top violent as certain fictional barbarian, as cool and collected as a certain pulp detective, and as willing to dive into madness and hell as certain pulp horror authors' short-lived protagonists. What he is not is a man trying to live on and find meaning in a world where the bombs fell and everyone is trying to scrounge in the irradiated mud for scraps. Fallout 4 is too big and colorful for that. Fallout 4 is a shit Fallout game, but it is one hell of a great pulp action superhero fantasy game. The kind you would find in the dusty and dim back aisles of a second-hand or used bookstore. The kind where the shiny Barnes & Noble books don't go, but where one can find a great tale just waiting for you if you're willing to do a little work and a little sleuthing. And support your local bookstores while we're at it. It's obvious the developers did. Thank you for listening. Deleted Saves would like to thank Brad, Keith Gasper, Orden Wells, and Maslama for being patrons of the show. If you would like to become a patron of the show, please go to patreon.com and check out Deleted Saves podcast. All donations go directly towards maintaining the show itself. Thank you.